All right. So as I mentioned in the Facebook group, we are going to be talking briefly about a few deals I'm working on, and I don't want to spend a ton of time like drilling down on the like kind of specific deal deep dive like we've done on some of the other calls because we've done that so much. I don't want to be repetitive, but I do want to focus on some of the trends and highlights I'm seeing while working through these deals, things that are definitely different than they were even a year ago, and certainly different the last 7 years that I've been in the business. So, like I said, I want to talk about how I'm finding deals and what I'm seeing in the market, how funding and setting up partnerships, um, the challenges I've been seeing with lenders recently. And I think I mentioned a couple weeks ago I was going to have a zoning hearing on May 1st, so I did that. I'm going to talk about that, and then again, just kind of a high level view on the actual deals themselves. Like I said, I don't want to spend an exorbitant amount of time on that because again, we've done that a lot recently. But so to start off, I just quicker review. I just bought a condo that's going to be a lease option for one of my employees. I probably mentioned that, but I closed on that a couple weeks ago. And one interesting thing that I have been working through is that it was vacant for a very significant time. I don't know exactly, but some of the neighbors have told my guys that it's been upwards of 20 years that it's been vacant, which is pretty shocking. Hey, Devesh, how you doing? Good seeing you.
Good, Joe.
Uh,
How are
Good. Thanks for joining us. Um, so if that's the case, it's probably actually the longest vacancy I've ever seen in a property that I purchased. Um, and this is just a small 3-bed, 2-bath condo. I mean, not small, but it's not a huge house or anything like that. It's about 1,300 square feet. Um, the property has some foundation issues we're gonna have to fix. It had a previous roof leak that had basically ruined all the drywall and insulation, and so all that's been stripped. But the unique challenge, first time I've ever dealt with this, is I guess Duke at some point had pulled the meter out of this property, and I found out that you actually have to go through a permit and inspection process just to get a meter put back in your property, even if it was only taken out for a vacancy. So because Duke said basically that if a property is vacant for 3 years, they take their meter back. So I'm having to deal with that. It's been kind of, like all permit situations, it's been a little frustrating, but anyway, so I'm buying that one, lease option. We can talk a little bit more about that later. The other property I'm buying is a 5-unit condo in Covington, Kentucky. So that was actually brought to me by another investor that I know, and we're doing a partnership on that deal. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the partnership aspect of that. I know that's something that we have had a lot of questions about in the group. And then the other one is just a duplex in Deer Park. And I've done a few of those, but this is a property where the zoning was an issue. So that's we're going to talk a little bit about that zoning hearing I had on Monday. And again, that's the first time I've ever dealt with that, so it was kind of interesting experience. But anyway, those are the 3 properties I'm buying right now. Closed on 2 of them. I'm closing on the other one on Friday. So if you have questions at any point, feel free to chime in. And I know Devesh is a fellow Deer Park investor, so he may have something to learn from dealing with that experience as well. So funding these deals, and this kind of ties into the financing part. Most of you who know me know that I typically use commercial financing for purchase and rehab funding. And that's what I've been doing primarily the last 7 years. And since I buy properties that are really deep value adds, rehab and getting rehab funding is a huge aspect of what I do. And obviously kind of follows the Burr method that you're probably all familiar with, and the terms. I'm sure you've all heard that term. So that's been my strategy mainly. And what I'm finding dealing with some of the lenders that I've done several deals with is a couple things. Most lenders right now are staying away from small deals because they don't want to put, and I don't want to say now, that has kind of been a historical trend, but I'm getting more pushback now than I ever have on deals that are, let's say, less than 500,000 in total, right? So purchase and rehab less than 500,000. I'm seeing very little appetite for those type of properties. The only thing I can really think is that doing a $10 million loan is the exact same amount of work as doing a $100,000 loan. So I think that's part of the issue, right? Just like as being an agent, we deal with the same thing, right? I mean, really, for the most part, selling a $50,000 house is the same as a $1 million house. So, and we obviously make a lot less money. I think that's part of it, but I also think that just in general, the sentiment in the lending market is very conservative right now. Obviously, we've seen in the news with the banks failing. We have record withdrawals and accounts deposit balances being record lows. So I think there's a lot of factors that are causing banks to really be very cautious with the loans they're doing. So loans they might have done 6 months or 12 months ago, I'm seeing pushback on. And again, these are it's a small sample size, but having worked with these banks for years, I'm pretty surprised by some of the response I'm getting. I even had a term sheet come back to me for like a 65% loan to value, and that's with like basically perfect credit, good deal, great financials. Like there's no negative aspects to the loan other than the banks just, wanting to be really cautious. And obviously, at 65% loan to value on a small deal, it's not really worth doing. So what I ultimately decided to do was instead of doing commercial financing on 2 of the deals, I'm actually getting a private lender who's going to basically do all of the lending for the purchase and rehabs. And then I'm going to refi them on a conventional loans on the back end. So for the condo and the duplex, that's the plan. There could be some potential zoning challenges going conventional because of the zoning change that had to happen. Obviously, I don't know if that's the case. I'll have to refi it to a commercial loan anyway. But it is basically the easiest way to do what I'm trying to do, the least amount of hassles, but it is obviously more expensive, right? I'm going to pay a private lender more interest than I'm paying a commercial lender. So at this point, I'm kind of choosing convenience over the cost of the money. But that's just where I'm at with trying to do some more deals at volume and scaling up. So yeah, let me briefly talk about the zoning hearing, and let me share my screen. I'll pull up this property. Share my screen. All right, you guys see the map? Google Maps here. Cool. Okay, so this is the side-by-side duplex I'm buying here on Galbraith Road in Deer Park for anyone familiar with Cincinnati. And this right side here is historically been used as a residential property. And this left side here has been historically used as commercial property. Now, for most of you who know me, I was a cop here for 8 years in the city of Deer Park, so I know this area fairly well. This left side here was vacant 7 of the 8 years I worked here. The only thing that ever was rented here was actually like a rap group. They had a little studio set up in here, and they ended up getting this window shot out by another rap group. So there was like a whole, East Coast, West Coast feud thing. I don't really know the details, but I know they were all from Chicago. That's all I remember. And one of these, it wasn't my case, but one of these windows got shut out. And it was quickly vacant right after that again. So the reason why that matters is that when I went to present this case to the city to get this left side, initially I wanted to get it rezoned to residential. What I actually found out on a technical level is that I had to get a waiver for a conditional use for residential use of this side. And it's a very unique property. My case to the city, because the building code actually strictly or specifically states that you cannot use financial gain as a factor for changing zoning. Obviously, for people who know Cincinnati and know Deer Park, this being used as a 3-1 or 3-2 apartment is going to be more valuable than a commercial space. But I knew going in that could not be my argument, right? Because they don't care about that. So my argument to the city was, there's only 1 or 2 parking spaces here, right? We're in a school zone. As you can see here, there's Amity Elementary across there. Okay. And what may not be obvious from this is that during the school pickup and drop off, this is like a parking lot both ways, right? So this is one of the many reasons why I think this left side has never been successful for a business, because there's no street parking. Now there is a driveway and there's a parking lot in the back, and that's all going to be repaved. So I'll be able to have plenty of tenant parking, but there's really not feasible parking on here for business. So that was one of my main arguments. My other argument was, this is actually a house coincidentally I sold last year, and this is all residential up to here as well. So my point was, hey, I'm trying to match the existing inventory of the block. I'm trying to reduce parking in the school zone. Hey, funny enough, look at that. There's my sign. I didn't know that. Anyway, so those were my arguments to the city, right? And I think that, let me back up. I knew most of the people on the zoning commission. I had relationships with a lot of them. So that's obviously a unique circumstance that almost nobody's going to have. And of course that helped me, trying to sell them on getting this approval. I think I would have got it either way, but it certainly didn't help or didn't hurt having, friends in high places, so to speak. But it's like, I also knew that buying this property without that change probably didn't make any sense. So it was really, really crucial. And I actually pushed out my closing just enough time to make sure I had the hearing. So we had the hearing on Monday. I got the zoning approval, and then we're closing on Friday. But I think that the hardest part about this was the paperwork. So they actually make you submit a list of 300, a 300-foot radius from the property, and that ended up being almost 200 parcels. So in that little 300 circle radius from there, it was a lot of houses. That's a lot of like kind of condensed blocks of Deer Park. So I had to go out and actually pull every single one of those public record data, and you have to provide the owner and the mailing address to the city. They don't do that legwork for you. You also have to pay for you have to pay it was like a couple $100 for the postage and everything. So I used PropStream, if anyone's familiar with that, and I was actually able to literally drop a pin on the map and set a 300-foot radius, and then it gave me all the public record data. And now I had to filter through that because I had to filter out duplicates, right? Obviously there were some like rentals and, like one guy owned like 6 properties or whatever. I had to filter that out and make sure I only gave it to him one time. But that was interesting. That was the hardest part of it, is just doing the initial application paperwork. But yeah, I thought that was pretty cool, and something I never dealt with. Obviously I'm glad it went through, and we're going to close on the property. Any questions about any of that? Cool. All right, so let me talk a little bit about the partnership aspect of this. So the 2 of the properties I'm buying myself, like I said, I'm getting a private lender, not an equity partnership, but a lending partnership. And the other one was a deal another guy brought to me. Some of you may know him from some of the other Cincinnati groups, but Grant Rothenberger, I know DJ may know him, know Grant. So guy about my age, maybe a little bit younger. He lives in Northern Kentucky, where the deal is. He has a shop. He has a detail shop right next to this 5-unit building. And he basically had almost everything done, right? He already had negotiated a price with the wholesaler who was selling it. He already have a private lender set up for the purchase and partial rehab funds. He really just needed somebody with experience to help him basically take this property from A to Z. Now, this is a really, really heavy lift. This is a 5-unit, 3-story building. It's a hoarder house. Like whoever lived there basically stacked it full of garbage before they moved out. There's like 6-7 feet of garbage in almost every room. So this is a massive, massive rehab. Let me pull up some of my numbers on this. It's this one here. Yeah, so can you guys see the spreadsheet? Okay. So yeah, this is about a 500,000 all-in property, and we're buying it for 145. So that kind of tells you how big of a rehab this is. I mean, this is, 75% of the funds are going to be rehab money. And we're just doing it 50-50. And honestly, it is a situation where if it wasn't such a heavy rehab, he probably wouldn't need me. Like, this is like the first time in my real estate experience, I feel like I'm not the one doing all the heavy lifting. Like I said, he found the deal. He funded the deal. He negotiated it, basically had everything wrapped up in a neat little bow. And then he went out and talked to a handful of people. And I was one of the people he talked to. And I said, hey, let's do it. It's not a huge cash flow deal, but it's in an area that, again, for people familiar with Cincinnati, if everyone knows the transition that happened like over the Rhine, OTR, this is a similar situation where let's say we're into this for 500 and maybe it's only worth around 500 or 600 now, as completed. This is an area where in 5 to 10 years that can easily be $1 million property. So it's more of a long-term equity play. But the cool thing about this deal, aside from, obviously getting to work with a new partnership, is that I think it goes to show that people like Grant, who really don't have a whole lot of real estate experience, can still make moves and make things happen and get bigger deals like this done. And obviously, if things go well, he could end up with several $100,000 in equity, just simply by doing the legwork, finding the deal, putting it together. And he's not putting a single penny into this property. And I'm only putting a little bit of money into it, and obviously the rest of it we're using with private money and commercial financing on that deal. So I think it kind of shows both sides of it. It's kind of a cool, unique type of deal. For me, obviously, having done a lot of these really, really heavy rehabs gave me an opportunity to be brought in as his partner. And, he was able to approach me with the deal, and I was able to get the partnership from that experience. But it goes back to some of these things we talk about every single week on these calls, right? Tell people what you're doing. Like Angelo is a prime example. I'm starting to see Angelo posting what he's doing. He's showing people, hey, I just bought this property. Hey, I'm fixing up this property. Just little things like that. That's exactly how I started. And it helps you, tell all the people out there in the regular, not real estate world, what are you doing? Showing them. And it doesn't have to be things like this call where we're talking for an hour, hour and a half at a time about real estate. Just minor, subtle, you're just kind of poking them. Like, hey, look at this. Hey, look at this, right? It doesn't have to be a long drawn out, content creation type of thing. And that's how I started. And the point I'm trying to make is that that's what's led to a lot of these opportunities, right? And it really does snowball when people think of real estate and they think of you and your world and your circle. That's all you're really trying to do. And I guarantee you, if Angelo keeps up with this and he keeps talking about all the things he's doing on his new property, in a couple years or whenever he wants to start scaling up and buying bigger things, there's going to be people out there that see him as that real estate guy in his world and his sphere and the guys and girls he works with. And I'm just picking on him because I'm seeing him doing it right now. But it's a prime example of the things that we talk about, every week in this call. And yeah, so that was really the one thing I wanted to highlight on that. Like I said, it's a 50-50 partnership. It's pretty straightforward. Now, Grant is going to be more involved with the boots on the ground situation, kind of like what I typically do, because he's right there. Like I said, this is literally 100 feet away from his detail shop he has. So he's going to be heavily involved in the rehab, heavily involved in the ongoing management once we get it stabilized. So he's actually going to take over some of the things I would normally do in these deals, and which is even more incentive for me, because it's like one less thing I got to worry about, right? Any questions about that particular deal in Covington? Like I said, I don't want to get too into the weeds on the deals themselves, but I'm trying to pick out some lessons that I'm learning along the way that are hopefully helpful.
I was just gonna comment, Joe. That's a great area, and welcome to Kentucky, man.
Yeah, and again, I don't know anything about Covington. Literally, the most I've learned about Covington is from working through this deal the past couple, about like, let's say, last 6 weeks or whatever. I had no idea how much development was going on there, and there's some apartments, 1-bedroom furnished apartments, a couple blocks away from these that are going for 1,600.
Oh yeah.
And they had like 200 contacts on Zillow. I mean, it blew my mind. I was like, man, these people are paying outrageous rents. But it's walkable to the Braxton Brewery District, it's walkable to Main Strasse, it's walkable to the river. So it is in kind of it's like right on the fringe of like that prime downtown Covington area. Now, from what I'm being told from the people who know that area, including Grant, you walk a couple blocks north the other way, you start hitting some rougher blocks. You go south towards the river, or I'm sorry, I'm backwards. You go south, you hit some rougher blocks. You go north toward the river. That's when you're in like that prime time development area. Devesh, I know you had a question.
Yeah. I think I missed the part, Joe, but did you know the guy who already had this in contact, or did you go long way back, or you just
Yes.
him? Okay.
Yeah, so Grant and I have known each other probably 7-8 years. For anyone who knows Joe Fairless, and he used to host the Cincinnati meetup here, And that's how a lot of us met through that local Cincinnati group. Well, Grant was his assistant for years and years and years. So Grant's always been kind of connected with real estate, but he just never really built out his own portfolio. So, but yes, we had a previous relationship, and that's how he knew that I would be one of his viable options to help him, do a really heavy lift on a property.
Right. And that's what I was just wondering, like, it's when you do a partnership, it's good to know, like, someone. And my follow-up question would be, Joe, like, as you do partnership, like, I'm sure this is the first one you are doing with Grant, but you're having an LLC, or you're doing both in personal names, both of you, and how are you taking that on?
Yeah, so this deal was a little unique because we had to close so quickly. I mean, this was a wholesale deal. So literally, like, when he brought me into the fold, I think we had like 6 days to close. So we had to really quickly fund it with the private lender. Again, he already had that set up. We had to take title in our own names because there was literally no way. Kentucky's not quite as quick as Ohio as far as getting like LLC docs back. You can pay to get yours in Ohio back in 24 hours. You can't do that there. So there was literally no way we could close in an LLC. So actually what we're doing is we close on our personal names. We're taking that and we're doing a refi now, basically to add commercial financing and add the rehab money into the deal. And then we're going to put it into an actual partnership structure, LLC. So not the typical way I would do it, but given the circumstance, we really didn't have another choice.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
So Joe, where you come into this is you're going to be doing the rehab work, and that's how
Yes.
you're getting that 50%. You're putting that work in, and then you're 50.
Yeah, basically my kind of value to this deal is I'm going to oversee the renovations. So I'm bringing the commercial financing to the deal. So I brought in one of my loan brokers that I've done a bunch of deals with to get us a really specific type of financing for this type of deal because it is kind of unique. And a lot of banks don't like when 70, 80% of your value is tied to rehab, right? It's not every day you have 20% of your cost as your purchase. So you need the right type of lender for that type of deal. So leveraging my relationships on that piece, but then also, seeing it through from A to Z, using all of my contractors, my subs. And obviously I'm doing all that at cost, right? I'm not getting paid for any of that. All of that is going to be charged to the partnership at cost, and there's no markup with that. So that saves about 30-40% gross margins on that rehab. So let's just say it ends up being a $300,000 rehab, that's saving anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000, let's say, something like that. And then I am putting a little bit of capital into this. I mean, not a ton, but like I think we were like 4,000 short on our private lender, so I kicked in the difference. I'm paying for the legal work, so I'm putting a little bit of capital in, but not a ton. And then obviously once it's done and stabilized, then obviously I'll still be participating in the ongoing management. But what's unique about this partnership versus my previous ones is that my previous partners are like completely passive, like literally most of them never even looked at the property, and this time it's going to be more of an actual partnership where Grant is going to be involved in management. Grant may go over there and do maintenance work because he's 30 seconds away instead of me sending a guy down there for an hour. You know what I mean? So there's things that are just kind of make sense where we can both, leverage our own experiences and Grant's handy, so he's able to do some of those things like that. Back to my list here. Yeah, so I think I covered some of the topics I wanted to hit, but outcomes for these deals, the lease option, that one just briefly, I'm buying bought for 31. I'll probably put about 50 into it, and then I'm hoping to refi that for about 120 is my loan amount. So I should be all in for 100 or less, and then I'm going to refi about 120. So with the lease option, the reason why I really like this, and I think it's something you guys should definitely consider, is it's almost at the end of the day, it's no money, but it's also like no risk for me because I'm leasing this to an employee that I trust. And that's the hardest part because you have to find somebody. It's almost like you want to find your tenant and then you go and find the property. And I know that's backwards, but I've done this twice now. So it can be done and it can be replicated. But if you find somebody who has good income and is reliable income, but maybe they have no credit, or really bad credit, or maybe they don't have a social security card, so they can't go and get a loan. Those are the tenants that I've done this with. They can make really good lease option purchasers as tenants. And again, basically my fee is 1% interest monthly on the cash I have to invest, right? So that's during the rehab period. Then it's a $20,000 flat fee on the refinance closing, and then they pay me $300 a month ongoing until they close the loan. Now the upside for them as a tenant is, let's use this example. Let's say we're into this for 100 and we refi for 120. So I'm getting my 20K and my capital back out, plus my capital back. Then he now has a $150,000 condo that is top of the line, fully renovated, that he can buy for 120 minus principal at whatever point he buys it. So if he waits 10 years and its principal's 85,000, let's just assume real estate's going to continue to increase in value. He might be buying a condo that's worth 175 or 200,000, and he's locked into that principal amount of the initial note. So, my other deal I did, it appraised at 175 and almost same numbers. We were into it for 100. I refied it for 120. So day one that we closed, he had a $55,000 equity position on a lease option. So that's just how I do it. Obviously these are people that I know and trust and have relationships with. You don't have to be that nice, obviously I could certainly give them much less equity if I wanted to, but for me, it makes sense. They do the maintenance, they do all repairs, they do all the CapEx. I'm literally, once we close, unless they stop paying or get disqualified for their lease option, they own this in every aspect other than the title. Right. So I don't do anything. They pay all utilities. They're not calling me. And again, this is a unique tenant, right? You have to have a tenant who fits that mold. Like I'm not saying a single mom with 3 kids is going to be able to replace a furnace by themselves. There are exceptions to this, but I'm just saying that, there's different ways to look at this that you might tweak for your situation, but they make a lot of sense if you can find a good tenant. So anyway, that's the deal with that one. Duplex I already covered. That one's going to be hopefully about 300 per side in cash flow. Hopefully have about 50,000 in equity when I'm done with the refi. So that's just a bit more traditional type of deal. But shout out to Anderson Morgan, who you all met a few weeks ago. He's actually the one that sent me this deal because I learned a valuable lesson. He had his MLS notification set up for mixed use, and I didn't. So like we talked about, this was labeled as mixed use, which it is. And I would have never seen it because I didn't have my tracker on for that. I had Deer Park on, but I didn't have the mixed use on. So I would have actually never seen this deal had Anderson not sent it to me. So again, shout out to him. I already told him I'd buy him a beer or lunch or something for sending me that deal. And then lastly on the 5 unit, for anyone who knows Covington, this is going to be a higher level finish, probably even a little bit higher level finish than I do on most of my stuff. And the top unit is a 1-bed apartment, but we're actually going to do a dormer with a walkout deck because it has really nice city views. So that'll be I looked at some of the comps and rooftop decks on some of these apartment buildings. Like a 1-bed apartment is going to be $1,600 a month because of that amenity. And people are paying a premium for having that city view with that outdoor space. So again, it's kind of cool, unique type of situation, unique type of rehab, a little bit different than what I normally do. So, and like I said, that one's not going to be a huge equity play day one. We're probably going to literally be into this for at least 75% of the ARV. So best case scenario, we refi and we don't have to put any money into it, right? Because we have to pay off the commercial financing and private lender. But again, 5-10 years, we're hoping to double our money on something like that. And it'll have a little bit of cash flow in the meantime. Any questions
Joe,
about any of that?
Yeah, I got a question for you. So going back to the lease option, right? Because I'm trying to understand it better. So does your tenant, does he or she have the option to buy the property at a fixed price sometime in the future?
Yes.
Is that how this works?
Yeah. So again, there's a million, like everything in real estate, it's all negotiable, right? So there's a million, I've seen this done many, many ways. But the way my particular lease option is, they are going to be able to pay for the balance of the principal of the original note. So on when I go to refi my cash out, I'm buying it, rehabbing it with cash. When I go to refi that, I'm going to then the plan is, let's say, $120,000 principal note, right? That is all they owe to buy me out. Until they do that, like on this deal, because it's an Eastgate, taxes are low. Their PITI, my PITI on the mortgage is going to be like 900, 950, even at a 7% rate. But they're going to pay me 1250 or whatever it is. If it's 961, they're going to pay me 1261. And they know, and all this is above board. They know everything like this going in, right? So this is all worked out before I even bought the property. And this was a wholesaler deal. That's one thing I forgot to mention. So this was sent to me by a wholesaler. And if you guys recall, a few months ago, I was talking about that 7 condo portfolio I was trying to buy, same complex. So I was already up to date on all the comps because I just went through that whole deal that didn't work out, right? Same complex, and this is just a single condo. But if you recall, I was actually going to buy all those at 90 a door that needed rehab. Not as much rehab as this one, but they needed rehab. So as you can imagine, buying it at 31, there's a lot more room there for rehab at that price. So anyway, all that's to say, that one's from a wholesaler. The duplex was from Anderson, but it was MLS listed. That one had actually been on and off the MLS for like a year. So they've been trying to sell it a long time. And then the condo was brought to me by a partner. That was another thing I meant to mention, is how these deals were found that I forgot to mention. So did I answer your question, Angelo? Cool. Any other follow-up questions on those things we talked about? I know it was a lot of different topics, but awesome. All right, cool. Well, let's get in the group discussion. And DJ, you want to lead us off?
Sure. So still waiting to hear from the bank on the deal that we presented last meeting. I talked to him over the weekend, and he's presenting it, or he should have presented it to the board already this week, I hope. And so I'm hoping to hear from him hopefully tomorrow on his words were he's confident that it'll move forward. So I'm right now, it's waiting, and it's frustrating and whatever, but yeah, looking forward to getting moving on that. I just got a text message about an hour ago from one of my tenants of the duplexes that he's moving to Austin and wants to get out of his lease. So I'm dealing with that. That's a first, but we'll work through that. I'm not too worried about it. But if you know anybody wants
How are you dealing with that? If you don't mind me asking.
I mean, what I told him just off the cuff was that, so he's in a lease until July. I told him that he's in a lease until July, but if he can find, if he moves out and we can, if he finds somebody that passes the background, passes everything, I will swap them out and give him, let him out of his lease, because it doesn't cost me anything to market it. If he moves and I can market the apartment before he's going to move out, then I told him we'd work something out. I don't know what something is yet, but if I've got time and money and everything into it, I mean, he's, we'll figure out something in the middle there.
You plan on doing like all of your scrutiny and stuff. If he finds somebody, like, are you gonna?
Yeah, they have to pass my background check and everything. So
nice.
Yeah, this guy was interesting because he actually, his dad is an American citizen. His mom is a Mexican citizen. So his dad is in Texas, and he was born in the U.S. So he has a social security card. He just has no credit, no anything. So he actually had a bunch of folks from his church, like give me letters of recommendation for him. So it was an interesting scenario, but I mean, he turned out he's single guy. So, and then he travels for work. So, he's gone most of the time. So we just had rehab the apartment full gut. So hopefully it's still in phenomenal condition. So, but yeah, so that's where I'm at on those. I just started another book, Hal Elrod's Miracle Morning. I'm about a third of the way through it. If you guys haven't read it, the first third it's very good. I'm an early riser anyways, so it's kind of putting, getting some organization around that early rising. So
What's the name of it?
it's The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod.
Okay, cool.
Dude,
Thank
it's so
you.
good. How have
Yeah.
you not read that yet? You wake up at what, 4 a.m., Angelo?
4:30.
You're already on the Miracle Morning,
I
but
sleep in. I
still
don't get
read
up
it.
before 4.
Maybe it'll help me validate some of my beliefs. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, there's like a whole lifestyle around it. There's an app and everything. I haven't got through all of it yet, but it's good so far. And then yeah, from everything else, I'm going through my list here. Just I'm failing at, Angela's making me look bad posting on social media because I was doing really good on that when I was doing the 75 hard stuff, and I haven't done it at all, I think, since I stopped. So maybe I need to do 75 hard again so I start posting again. but I Joe, your comment on it makes you, it gets you noticed in your group. I actually, when I was posting before, doing 75 hard, not real estate, but I had 3 people reach out and say I motivated them to get started on stuff. So I mean, I don't do social media that much, but it's amazing when you do it, the influence you have just on, my small sphere. So
Yeah. And related to real estate, like, DJ, using you as an example, once you close on this 10 unit and you start giving progress updates, I mean, like, that's going to immediately put you, at another level in a lot of people's minds, especially the people who aren't in real estate. Like I said,
Yeah.
it's, you flip a house a year, they're going to be like, oh, this guy's a, real estate guru, right? I mean, it's, yeah, it's just, like I said, it's just a little thing, but I definitely encourage everybody to do it. And again, I didn't do any of that with intention of any, like, it wasn't like, oh, if I'm posting, regularly, I'm going to have all these private lenders call me. It's like, I never went to it with that mindset, but I realized that it leads to opportunities. That's the best way, easiest way to put it.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And as to your tenant problem, just, I've ran into that several times. And what I've done in the past is I tell them, look, if you break your lease, you're responsible for the balance. If I'm able to place somebody in there, I'm only going to charge you for the days it's vacant, and that's all. I've never had anybody really give me pushback on that. And it kind of takes pressure off you, because it's like, okay, if it takes 60 days to fill it, well, they're paying the difference, right? Now, hopefully they will. And obviously, hopefully you have a good deposit. And obviously I make that a caveat. It's like, hey, you got to leave the place clean. It needs to be ready to lease out. I want the keys back. I want the mailbox key. And only after I place a new tenant and get their deposit will I give you your deposit back, or whatever the balance of it is. So, hopefully all that's clear if that's the way you want to go about it.
Yeah. The only concern I have with tenanting is it's in South Lebanon, and the first time I tenanted it, it took me a while to find. I mean, lots of applications, but it's just weeding through the.
Yeah, no, I get it. And it's a good time of year. At least this is a kind of prime time for people moving.
Yeah, that's why I wasn't against them moving out.
Right. Yeah, it's not December, All right, Devesh, this is your first time here, I believe. I'm trying to find our list of questions here, but I'd like you to share. Give me 1 second. I'll post it in the. Here we go. I'm gonna post it in the chat. If I can find it. Here we go. All right, so yeah, that's in the chat. If you can look at that. So yeah, since it's you'll be doing the top section since it's your first time here.
Sure. Thanks, Joe. So hi, everyone. My name is Devesh. I'm located in the Bay Area, California. Markets I'm investing in: Cincinnati, invested on We have 3 properties, me and my wife, 2 multifamily and 1 single family. And the one that Joe brought up initially, one is in Deer Park. That's been doing really good. Happy to talk about it in later meetings. Years investing, this would be second year, 2 years now. But we are not, me and my wife, not don't invest very actively. Like right now, we are looking for a change in our primary home, so that is our focus. But we do want to get back into investments soon, and that's why I started doing this. Been in touch with Joe for almost 2 years. The first property was with Joe, and then always reach out to him for any help that I need with my units. Um, I already spoke about type of properties, short-term investment goals, 1 to 6 months. I would say we are closing on a primary home soon. So once that is done, I do want to get into multifamily or single family in Cincinnati, possibly Deer Park or similar neighborhoods. So I'll definitely touch base with you, Joe, and every one of you. If you have anything, just let us know. Long-term investment goals, financial freedom. Me and my wife, just that's our goal. Keep investing, and then become financially independent, and hopefully in few years, let's see. But what I hope to get from the group, I think the learnings today, joining for the first time, I think learned a lot of new things. The type of deals, Joe, you're doing, it's interesting. Definitely at some point I want to do something similar as well, like Burr, flip up. And from the group, I think learning from each other and hopefully at some point partnership, because I'm on all the way in West Coast. So I really would like to get good partners and see how we can work together. So yeah.
And
Did I cover
Devesh,
it? Yeah.
Devesh, what is it? What's your W-2 job?
I work as a software engineer, working at Google.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I appreciate you joining us, and we hope to. So we meet every 2 weeks, so we'll be back on the 17th, and hopefully you can keep joining us.
Yeah,
Devesh,
timing
are
is
you
good. Yeah, sorry, go
familiar
ahead.
with Pleasanton?
Oh yes,
Pleasanton?
I am. Yeah. I live in Fremont, so very close to Pleasanton.
Okay, one of my best friends is from Pleasanton.
Oh,
So
sweet. Is he into he or she real estate as well into?
he's a broker in California, so he does commercial real estate, like office, which
Nice.
has been tough. But
Okay.
he doesn't have any investments or anything.
Yeah. Bay Area in general for investment, it doesn't work out, man. Like for me, it would be lovely if I can do it here. It's easy to manage because right now, but it doesn't work out. The numbers don't meet, and the California tenant laws are pretty tenant friendly, I would say. So, but yeah,
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining, and I'm glad to hear the
Yeah,
Deer Park
awesome.
building's doing well.
yeah. Deer Park one is doing good job, but other we are having issues. Like I was talking, I think DJ, if I'm pronouncing getting your name right, you were telling your tenant is leaving and he or she is very cordial, like leaving and all these things. I have a property single family where I've had 2 evictions till now. So
What neighborhood?
it's Price Hill.
Yeah.
So it's a Class C neighborhood. I knew what I'm getting into when I was buying it, but it was a good deal.
Mhm.
We bought it like off market, 2 evictions till now, and this time we are going for Section 8. That's our strategy, right? No market tenant anymore. Let's get Section 8. That's what
Yeah.
we are doing. But it's been
Makes
difficult.
sense.
Happy to share that again. What our learnings are on with that property. It's been 2 years, nothing stable yet. So yeah.
Yeah.
Devesh,
I have the
did you
section.
say East Price Hill? Is that what you said?
Price, yes.
Yeah, that's rough. Okay, cool.
Yeah, yeah.
And are you still working with Saravana?
I am, yes. I think property manager wise, he's good. So
Okay.
he's managing all our properties. But yeah, we are working with him.
Good. Glad to hear that. All right, John.
All right, so I've been in the Virgin Islands for all week last week. So haven't done too much since we last were on the video. 2 questions for you, Joe, I guess. You said you are close friends with Joe Fairless.
Mhm.
In your opinion, what made you go the route of I know he's kind of very famous when it comes to syndication. What made you go the route of doing your own deals rather than working with him in a syndicate?
Yeah, I think about that a lot because he's obviously made a hell of a lot more money than I have, probably doing less work. But no offense to Joe, but no, I think I look at guys like Joe, not even Joe in particular, but guys in that role, and um it to me it's not really investing. And what I mean by that is it's a extremely lucrative job with ownership potential, if that makes sense. But knowing Joe and knowing his role, his primary role in his business is raising capital, right? So he doesn't look for deals necessarily. He doesn't really underwrite deals. He doesn't really operate deals in like ongoing basis. He raises funds for his partnership that he's in, and again, it is a form of investing because he does get ownership, obviously, but it is a very lucrative, high paying job. But to me, I look at it as a job, and it's one of those things where he has ownership and any syndicator has ownership, but I wanted something that I could tangibly control from the top to bottom. So that, I guess, is probably from a philosophical standpoint the main difference and why I never looked at doing that. And even to this day, like now that I have a lot of units and a lot of experience, I still don't really like the syndication model because it is are you familiar with I'm trying to think of their names now. Gino and
Yeah.
anyone help me out
Jake.
here?
Jake
Gino
and
and
Gino.
Jake. Okay, yes,
Yeah.
Jake and Gino. Okay, I've heard a few of their podcasts or they were guests on other podcasts. And they kind of put to words what I've always felt and I couldn't really, express. And they don't do the syndication model at all either. And what I've seen them do, and they're kind of like the guys at a higher level, like where I want to be in 5 years, where they buy a lot of smaller deals with partners. And they do equity structure like I have on some of mine. And obviously they're buying, 50, 100 unit deals, right? So they're scaled up a little higher than I am right now. But their model and the way they talk about it is, and the way they build out their company and have kind of unilateral control of that process. To me, that's the only way you can guarantee success. And and I don't want to say guarantee because you can never guarantee success 100% when you're investing in anything. But when I look at the syndication model, I look at that as you have such a small ability to control what ultimately happens with that process, right? Because if you're buying a 500 unit complex in Austin and you live in Cincinnati and you're raising $50 million to buy it or whatever, how much control of that do you ultimately have if that's successful or not? Right? I think it's very little. And that's why, just from a fundamental standpoint, I don't really like the syndication model. Because if I'm taking other people's money, which obviously I have and I've started doing more and more, I don't want there to be any tangible reason why that property failed that I could have had control over. And if it's something that I don't have any control over, then to me, that's a riskier investment that I'm comfortable taking, especially when it's risking other people's money. If I lose money on a deal for me and my money, okay, that's one thing. But, again, and I know it's a lot of different things, but that's just from a fundamental standpoint why I have never tried to scale into syndications.
Hmm.
And even as I continue to scale, and obviously I hope to buy larger properties, it would be from a joint venture standpoint.
And that makes sense too. Like, and I could see it could be probably like a royal pain in the ass to try to 1031 and have to stay with possibly the syndication group and all the nuances that go on with trying to 1031 and scale up when you own just a fraction of it. I guess now I can get like see how it is being a limited partner in the syndication that I'm involved with, and then see how it is when I control my own, say 4 unit, 5 unit, whatever it is, and kind of compare them together. And I guess that leads to the second question. You said something, you're seeing a decent amount of like negativity and negative sentiment in the market, as in like people think the market's going to crash, or what are you seeing?
I wouldn't say in the market per se, but when it comes to lenders, like conventional lenders, commercial lenders, all of my dealings with them right now, and DJ talked about his deal. And I don't want to necessarily say that that's a negative sentiment, but they're certainly taking their sweet time, as he already talked about, because that is a normally like a 2 to 4 week process that's now been dragged out like 6+ weeks. And I think it's extreme cautiousness in the marketplace. That's what I'm seeing. Like, if you have a deal that's like iffy, like banks are not going to lend on it, or they're going to lend at such miserable terms that it's not even worth doing, like 50-60% loan to value, right? And I'm seeing that. I'm literally seeing that come back on term sheets for myself and clients where they're like, yeah, we're not going to give more than 60%. Or what I'm also seeing right now is where they're like, so in my model, Burr, right? If I have a deal that's going to be worth 500,000 and I'm only going to be into it for 4 or 350, let's say, they're only going to loan me 75% of that 350, not 75% of that 500, which is what they would have historically done. Does that make sense? So even if you have a good appraisal, they're still not loaning on it, which is something that has
Makes
shifted.
sense.
Which is something that shifted in literally the last couple months.
Would you say like getting like a 4-unit, like the paperwork that you have to do as far as getting a loan is just as hard as getting a 10-unit? I've heard different things.
No, honestly, a 4-unit, I mean, it's pretty straightforward because you're going to be dealing with conventional financing. So it's like no more difficult than buying like a single family house. Obviously, buying an investment property is going to be a little bit different than buying a primary residence, but buying a 10-unit is different because it's going to be underwritten based on the income. And
Right.
the 4-unit is going to be underwritten based on, comps and sales. So that's going to be the main difference. Now, if you would ask me this a year ago, I would have said buying a 10-unit is easier because typically commercial lenders are a lot more straightforward. They're going to say, here's the appraisal, here's the income, this is what we're projecting, and they're either going to do the loan or not. Right now, I think it's kind of flipped back the other way where conventional loans are actually a little bit more straightforward than commercial.
All right.
I don't know where you left off. Do you have any monthly goals that you worked on this month? I think that's where I don't think you actually shared your part.
Yeah. So now that I'm back, got no vacations for a little bit, been taking a lot of them, but yeah. So looking in the next few months, looking to make my first investment by myself. I don't want to say I'm lost, but like Florida's where I live is just too expensive. Like Dinesh said, it doesn't make sense here. So Ohio, one of the main places where I'm looking, Columbus, Cincinnati. So I really don't know. Like I look at the numbers and I look at the stuff you sent me, of course, in the MLS and whatnot. It's just kind of hard to get started and know exactly where. I know he said he's been having some issue with tenants in like the West Price Hill area. I see a lot of like 3 and 4 units there. Looks like a little bit maybe like CED area or something like that. So I don't know. I don't live there. I've never been to Ohio. I know nothing about it. So I've been, trying to learn as much as I can. But hopefully, learn more and, maybe, come up there or something like that. And then, pull the trigger on the first deal.
Yeah, I mean, so one tip I would give, and I've given this to a lot of out-of-state clients, is that when you're getting all of this data, right? And like, I'm going to use you what you've told me in the past as an example. You're looking at multiple markets, potentially multiple states, and you're talking to a bunch of agents just like me, and you're getting all this data from all these neighborhoods, and it becomes so overwhelming that it's almost impossible to make an educated decision. So what I would challenge you to do, and I don't, wherever you do this, I don't care. You don't have to pick Cincinnati or Ohio or at all. But what I would do is I would focus on areas where you feel confident you're going to find a good team, right? Agent, contractors, property managers, lenders, all those things, right? I think that's probably the most important factor, because if you find the smoking hot 3% deal in Muncie, Indiana, and you have nobody there to help you actually execute that deal, it doesn't really matter how good the deal is, right? And if you're wiring money to a crackhead who's going to take it and you're not going to actually get any work done, which I've seen happen, having the best deal in the world isn't going to actually come to fruition, right? So what I would challenge you to do is focus on where you can build a team, one. Focus on learning that market, intimately, like you're talking about, whether that means coming there or if that just means doing a ton of research. And what that ultimately looks like is you're underwriting 50, 100 deals in that market, no matter how good or bad they are, and no matter whether you like that neighborhood or not. But by the time you do that, you're going to develop 5 neighborhoods that you love and you know like the back of your hand, as well as you can know them remotely.
Okay.
Literally get on Google Maps and walk the streets, get a feel for what it looks like. And then doing that, you're going to know what the numbers look like. So when you get a good deal, like I'm going to use myself as an example. When I get like when Anderson sent me that deal and I looked at the square footage, I looked at the street it was on, I knew what the comps were in Deer Park. I knew within 30 seconds that I could make that deal work without even looking at it. I never called the agent, nothing. I knew within 30 seconds, I'm like, that's a deal. That's a deal. And I need to make this happen. Right now, obviously the zoning thing became a hiccup that I had to work through. But my point I'm making is that if you do these things I'm saying, you're not going to have analysis paralysis, because you're going to know what area you want to be in. You're going to know what neighborhood you like, and you're going to know what a good deal looks like. That makes sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And I guess it's kind of getting over the nerves thing of I guess most people make an offer sight unseen out of state, right? They don't come up to look at every deal. They'd be flying all over the fucking place. So
Right.
yeah, sight unseen, that's too nerve-wracking thing. But it's probably like one thing, you know, with everything else, you know, once you do it, yeah, you know, second one becomes easier, third thing becomes easier, and making offers all the time.
Exactly.
So
Well, and you know, again, it's a conversation I've had many, many times, but you are at no risk when you write an offer, because you're going to have contingencies in place that basically put it at no risk, right? You're going to put earnest money down that you're going to get back. And in Ohio, there's basically no risk of losing your earnest money unless you willfully violate the contract terms outside of your contingencies in place. And the only time I've seen that happen is like you get through inspections, financing, title, and the day of your closing or the day before your closing, you say, hey, I changed my mind, I want to buy it. Well, okay, yeah, you lost your earnest money. But you're going into that decision knowing that's what you're doing, right?
Right.
Outside of that, it's almost impossible to lose your earnest money. You basically have no financial risk. And the other thing is, like what I tell all of my clients, whether they're local or remote, it's like, you know, if you're working with me, we're going to do a walkthrough. We're going to do a video walkthrough. Obviously, I know I did this with Devesh with him being out of state, but then you're also going to get a third-party inspector, and that can be anybody you want, and they're going to give you a totally objective opinion, because you're not paying them to tell you what you want to hear. You're paying them to tell you what's wrong with the property. And having all of that data, whether you look at the property or not, should help you make an informed decision, right? And again, that's why it's important to have a good team, like we talked about. Again, I do not care at all on a personal level if you decide to buy here in Cincinnati, but wherever you decide to buy, those are the things you need to look for, because ultimately that will help you be successful if you're buying out of state. And
yeah, and the video walkthrough thing you said, like some other like brokers have reached out to me on bigger pockets, and I don't know if they're too busy or whatever, or maybe my deal's too small for them. They don't really do video walkthroughs. They say like, I don't really go to the property myself ever. So it's all like done online, like or whatnot. It's like, you know, how are you supposed to see it? You just see pictures and.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can't speak for them. Like if you're talking about like a big broker or like a big team, then they're probably not the agent actually going out doing walkthroughs or showings. But if they're telling you they won't even go walk a property, that's a red flag to me. You know,
that's why I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Like I said, I've sold, you know, I don't even know how many hundreds of properties out of state, and every one of those I walk through, I take photos, I do videos, I send them to my clients. Because I want them to see what I'm seeing. I've even done like FaceTime calls where I literally walk through on the phone with them if they're available. But anyway, all of that should just help you feel more comfortable. And depending on the deal, you know, if it's a $5 million building, well, yeah, of course, those clients typically come look at the property. If it's $100,000 building, they may not. And I've told this story before. I live in Cincinnati, and I've literally bought property sight unseen that I didn't even walk living here, just because I either didn't have time or it wasn't convenient, or I knew at these numbers, I don't care what's wrong with it, because I'm going to buy it no matter what. You know what I mean? So it's like, I've even, you know, done what I'm saying and not looked at a property, but I went and had an inspector go look at it. And then I made my decision based on that.
Makes sense.
So, well, I know we got a little bit in the weeds. Anything else you wanted to add?
Oh no, just like I know you said property management, they all kind of suck. finish Brandon Turner's book on, managing rental properties. I don't think I have the wherewithal to do it myself out of state. I would do my own townhouse whenever I move out of here. I would definitely do that. My dad lives close by, but as far as doing that, I would need to find a property management that's halfway worth something,
Yeah.
which I know would be a challenge in itself.
Yeah, it is. It's tough, and as Devesh mentioned, Saravana is one of the managers I've referred out to many clients. I've had mixed reviews on him. I'm glad Devesh is having a good experience. I like him, but I think part of the problem with any manager, whether it's Saravana or anyone else, is that once you hit a certain amount of units and you have employee turnover, like your experience is going to ebb and flow, right? Just like it does with me in my construction business. When I'm fully staffed and everyone's doing what they're supposed to and we're churning and burning, everyone's happy, right? But if I lose 2 guys, which I've done and I've had happen, now all of a sudden projects are getting behind, everybody's pissed off. So I guess my point I'm making is find a good manager, but understand that it's not always going to be roses all the time. They're typically scaling because that's the only way you make money in that business. And you're going to kind of have to sometimes work through growing pains with them. So, and I think any market you go into, you're going to deal with that. Awesome. Angelo?
John, just one quick comment. I mean, if you are really considering Cincinnati, I would stay east of 75 if I was you. Now, of course,
Okay.
east of 75, you still gotta look within certain areas, right? And maybe at some point we can talk, and some of these are pretty popular, right? Like Norwood. Like good luck finding something over there, right? I mean, that's pretty hot. Walnut Hills, it's very up and coming. What's the other one that's not too far away from there? Well, East Walnut Hills actually. There's some pretty expensive areas. Evanston, right? That's another up and coming area. Again, just some ideas out there. I mean, we can also talk offline if you want to
Yeah.
reach out. I'll send you my email here shortly.
Oh,
But
cool. Thanks.
yeah, for sure. And again, as you guys know, we started doing a little bit of I mean, I wouldn't really call it a rehab, but just we're doing a little rewiring and learning at the same time. It's been a lot of fun. Again, I was not really expecting to be doing this work right now, but I'm actually excited about it. Maybe I just don't have enough to do. But we've been grinding after work. Things are going well. We're executing our plan, and that's going well. My single family here in Florence, I got everything ready to go. I got all of my pictures. All I gotta do is get my marketing going. I've already signed up for Turbo Tenant, so I got all of that set up. I just literally gotta upload the pictures and just go for it, right? So I'll be doing that by the end of the week for sure. And then of course, as you guys know, I've been trying to increase my just kind of get that momentum going and do the social media stuff. And what I've been also doing at work. So at work, I do a lot of training, I do a lot of coaching. And every time that I get in front of people when I'm doing one of my presentations and I'm introducing myself, I also bring it up that, hey, I'm also a real estate, buy and hold investor. And if you ever bring me a lead and I close on that lead, I will give you $1,000. Once you say that, $1,000, now they're listening, right? Um, Again, just throwing it out there, and I want people to I want to make sure that people associate my name with real estate, right? Kind of complement the social media. What else? My savings goals still on track so far. And then hopefully if we can find the right deal, of course, hopefully later this year, if I can get 2 more doors under my belt, then I will hit my 2023 real estate investment goals. So again, very focused right now, very motivated. And we just keep on we plan to we're gonna keep on trucking right now. So
Awesome, man. Yeah, congrats again on your deal. And it's awesome seeing that you guys start progressing on it. Gage?
Another thing on that, Angelo, documenting it is good to put out for other people to see, but it's also good for yourself. I'm starting to get like those year Snapchat, like it shows you a year ago, and I'm seeing all the stuff. And I took a lot of videos just that I never posted, but I took the videos of myself like going around my house, stuff I completely forgot about. And now I'm going back and seeing it and being like, it's full circle, and it makes
Heck
you
yeah, heck
feels it
yeah.
feels good to go back and see that stuff.
It
So
actually goes back also to that picture that Joe posted a week or so ago, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, for
Oh,
paint.
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yep, exactly. So, update for me. As you can see, I'm not in my duplex. I'm at my parents' house. So, moved out of the upper unit, got it. It's rent ready almost. I'm gonna have it professionally cleaned. And then I'm gonna take the photos and put it up on everything, Zillow and all that. And hopefully get that rented out here soon. In the meanwhile, I moved here for the next like couple days. I think last time I updated you, I had a house under contract. It was a foreclosure. It didn't go through. Literally the next day, the real estate agent that I used for my first deal, she messaged me a deal that came up on the MLS. It was only on for like 2 hours. Um, I went between the time where that deal fell out and I went under contract with this next deal was like 3 days. We were going out. I think I walked maybe 5 properties. And she sent me one. It was on for like 2 hours. I ended up making a cash offer like later on that day. I really think speed helps, especially with this type of deal. It was retail. It wasn't investor owned. It's a single family. And I just jumped on it. They accepted the offer. It's in Riverside, which I'm sure some of you probably know where that's at. It's on the west side. Um, it's I just looked the other day. It's like 4.5 miles from Paycor Stadium, which I thought was pretty cool. So I close on that on Friday. And so we'll be closing on that, moving in, doing as much work as I can myself, and then getting the rest of it done and then hopefully renting that out. Um, Backstory behind all of that, for those of you that don't know, for my first property, I had a private loan at some good terms. Bought it, refinanced it, and then instead of having to pay that private loan back out, they allowed me to reuse that money again. So that's what I used to buy this next one. But this is the end of the road for that money. They do want it back. So after this, I'll be refinancing it, giving them their portion that I owe them. And then from there on, I'll have to get more creative with my financing. I think on my next deal, I'm going to be looking at doing a FHA. So it's probably going to be putting me into a little bit of a different type of investment than I've been in. The past two have been some heavy rehab work. I think this next one I might be a little bit closer to something turnkey, because in order to get FHA, you can't go into something that's obliterated. So just keeping that in mind, if I do FHA, I'll try to max out at a 4 unit and get as many as I can. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm reading the Multifamily Millionaire by Brandon Turner and Brian Murray, volume 2. I read volume 1 before. Been listening to a lot of Grant Cardone, and just trying to get my mindset bigger. I'd really, really like to be able to tackle a 10 to 20 unit here within the next couple of years. Just getting my head wrapped around everything that it takes, specifically the underwriting part. You got to be really strong at underwriting, and right now I'm not. So just getting an understanding of that, and working my way through all of that. So in terms of as for the group, that property is in Cincinnati proper limits. So if any of you have experience with, purchasing a home, I know the city itself has a lot of rules. One of the things that I ran into already was like, this house has a septic system, making sure that septic system is running properly. And I think one other thing I read is like, you have to sign your rental up. If you're going to turn it into a rental, you have to sign it up. So I'm sure there's some other caveats and stuff that I'll probably need to learn. So if anybody has any quick tips on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is make sure there's no litter in the front yard, because they do not care. They'll give you a $500 ticket, and I've had to deal with that a couple times. Even if someone dumps trash on your property or tenant or anything else, you still have to pay it. So just be really careful of that, especially while you're fixing it up. Make sure there's no trash bags outside or anything like that. I probably told this story in here, but I literally had a homeless guy sleeping on my porch in a sleeping bag, and my littering ticket literally was a picture of him and his hair sticking out of his sleeping bag, and they gave me a $500 ticket for a homeless guy sleeping on my vacant porch. And literally I asked the judge in court, I'm like, this is the dude, you can see this is the guy, and you're saying this is trash. Like how like, and that one they dropped down to like a $200 fine, but I still had to pay it. So
Okay.
anyway, yeah, be careful with that.
Gage, how do you like the multifamily book? I just ordered it a few days ago, the first edition.
The first edition, Brandon Turner writes it. He's more heavily, like you can hear his voice throughout most of it. So I liked it better because I like Brandon Turner a lot, and he's really relatable and he writes good. The second one's a lot more technical. Brian Murray, although he tries to be, I think, like Brandon Turner a little bit, it's just a little bit more dense. But in terms of just overall content, it's good stuff. He really breaks it down. You can tell that he breaks it down. Like when he does this stuff, he puts it through very rigorous, stringent, whatever.
Yeah, he did in Crushing It in Apartments, his other book.
Yeah, I read that one too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this one, Crushing It, was a little bit easier to read, I'd say, than this one is, in terms of, man, he really breaks it down.
Really?
Like step by step on how to do everything. So it's super technical. But I think after you read it, you'll have a pretty good understanding of how to really start in that world. So
cool.
So Gage, my I know you just mentioned you're looking for like trying to scale up some bigger deals, hopefully in the near future, next couple of years. My advice to you would be start doing some really specific directed marketing to preferably like mom and pop elderly landlords. Start writing them handwritten letters, and if you can find a good deal, like 20 to 50 units anywhere in Hamilton County or Southwest Ohio, I can guarantee you, whether it's me or someone else, will certainly partner with you and get the capital and the financing and all the other stuff. And that would be a really good way for you to get your foot into that door, because right now it's finding the deal. That is the name of the game.
I'm in.
If you're willing to
engage.
Yeah, if you're willing to put in the work and find the deals, you'll find the money and the financing and the experience needed to tackle those sort of things. So
sweet. I talked to, it wasn't a 50 unit or anything today, but I did talk to an older lady for about an hour in a property that she's looking to sell. It's crazy. It'd be like walking into a time machine. It's mixed use, and the storefront that she has, literally, it's like she's like a hair salon lady, and the machines she has are from like the 60s, and she still uses them. It was crazy. But
that's exactly that. That's the type of seller you want to find, because
Angela's hairstylist.
Yeah.
Probably that's probably what those machines would do to your head nowadays.
You want to find somebody who wants 1960s pricing on the sale. That's what you need.
Right.
Yeah.
No doubt.
All right, cool. So mainly updates for me. I already mentioned obviously the deals I'm working on. The 28 unit is slowly progressing. We've been kind of tied up on some of our bigger rehab projects that we signed on like a year ago, and we're still clearing out our schedule. So we're building a really big addition in Coleraine. So that's been kind of cool because we don't do that a lot. So it's always fun doing new projects that we haven't really done a lot of. But it is slowing progress down, obviously having the manpower tied up. We have 3 units in progress. I just called to schedule my set out, my first actual set out. So I've had a few evictions, but they always moved out. So this is my first one where she flat out told me, hey, I'm not leaving until they throw me out. And I'm like, all right, at least she told me. So that's actually all the way out in June 2nd, I think is what they told me. So that kind of sucked. That's going to end up being like a over 60-day process from start to finish, from the time I initially filed with the attorney all the way until set out. So, and I think it's just because the bailiff's super short staff, like most law enforcement, and what used to be a 7 to 10 day set out is now over 30 days. So, be mindful of that. And other than that, just moving forward on these deals, keeping our vacancy or our occupancy at 100%. I got two tenants moving out of some of my other buildings, so we already started marketing for those. And I always try to keep my occupancy at 100% for all of the rent ready units. And if there's something that needs to be, touched up, we try to do that right away. And that's one thing I would advise anybody, if you can, with like DJ's talking about with his, try to do your marketing as much in advance as possible. If you know someone's leaving, try not to that's been one thing I've been very successful at the last 7 years, is I've had almost zero vacancy that was within my purview of control, right? Obviously I've had people move out in the middle of the night, not tell me, of course I didn't have any control over that, but very, very little vacancy that was controllable. So
Would you say it'd be a good idea that if you know your lease is coming up within the next month or two, to reach out to your
Oh, yeah.
tenant and say, hey, your lease is coming up soon. Just
Yep.
wanted to check in and see if you plan on
So yeah,
extending?
this is my strategy every time. And I'll admit I've gotten not as organized with this, as I've scaled up. Again, when you have 10 units, it's a lot easier to manage than having 100 or whatever. But it's like I try to get with them with a couple months advance, and I say, hey, look, your rent is at this amount. If you want to renew, it's going to be this amount. And that's usually a pretty minor increase. If you want to go month to month, it's going to be this amount, which is a more significant increase. What would you like to do? I give them options. Like, I don't ever go back and forth on price or anything. I literally say, it's this, or you can move out. And I say that nicely, but that's what I say. They usually get back to me within a couple of days. They tell me what they want to do, and then we go from there. But if they tell me, hey, I'm moving out on July 1st, then yeah, boom, I'm putting my marketing up no less than 30 days ahead of time. Try to do like 60 is ideal, no less than 30. And like I said, that limits, I can count on one hand how many days of vacancy I've had that were controllable. And it doesn't sound like a big deal, but you extrapolate that out over a lot of units, over a lot of years. I mean, that's tens of thousands of dollars in vacancy that I've saved. So
when you do, you give them the option, your rent will be X if in the future, or if you want to do month to month, it's this. I'm sure you probably discount it a little bit for if they want to sign for a year versus month to month. You probably make it cost a little bit more.
Exactly. Yeah. So like, for example, like I don't know, my 1 bedroom average across my portfolio is probably like 700. So if they're at a 700 on a 1 year lease, then I'm going to say, hey, it's 715 or 725. And obviously there's a lot of factors, right? What are the comps? Is this tenant a pain in the ass? Are they a great tenant? I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into that, but let's assume it's a regular tenant, 715, 725, or if you want to go to month, it might be 750, it might be 775. It's just obviously those are going to depend on the market. But I want to make that month to month a little bit more painful number, because obviously I want to try to reduce my month to month tenants as much as possible. Unless they are one of those pain in the ass tenants, then I may want to keep a month to month so I don't have to even deal with it. Because there's that sweet spot, right, where they're a pain in the ass, but they don't actually break any lease, But like, I have one guy who literally calls us every 6 weeks because he gets mildew on his ceiling because he won't use the ceiling fan, his bathroom vent. And this guy's got some problems, so I'm pretty nice to him. But my point is, like, I have to send someone out there once a month to wipe his ceiling down with a rag because he refuses to do it. And he's the type of tenant, it's like, I just want him to move, But he doesn't actually cause any problems, but he's annoying. And you'll have those type of tenants. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I guess the last thing I'll add before we close is, like, I feel like I always go through these cycles. We have these calls, I get super amped up, I get motivated. I'm like, like we had a couple calls. I'm like, man, I need to do more. I want to buy more. And now I'm buying 3 properties like out of nowhere that I didn't really plan on buying at all. And now I'm like in the zone where I'm like, shit, I got a lot of work to do. I should just focus on, let me get all this stuff done. And then you go through that cycle, and then you get about halfway through it and you see the light at the end of the tunnel. You're like, oh no, I want to buy more. And it's like, it is, it's interesting how real estate is so cyclical and, in every way, but it's even just from an emotional standpoint, it's like, I always feel like I need to be doing more, but then when I'm doing a lot, I kind of get overwhelmed. And, the guys out there that are, or guys and gals out there that are buying 10 or 20 houses a month, I'm like, I envy them, because I don't know. It's just a confidence thing, right? I mean, I don't know how they get to that confidence level where they're willing to take on that much risk and scale. And even if I could like logistically do it, which I probably could if I really, wanted to get to a point where I could buy like 10 houses a month or whatever, it's a confidence thing. It's like I feel like I think of that, I picture that, and it's like I feel so overwhelmed. Like it just magnifies all your problems, right? So I don't know. Anyway, I don't know where I'm going with that thought, other than it's just interesting. I every time we have these calls, I kind of look and think about these things that keep me motivated and focused.
Grant Cardone says,
Yeah.
sorry.
No, go ahead, Gage.
I was gonna say Grant Cardone says new problems are good. That means you're working. That means you're growing. So
Yeah. And that too. And it's interesting because it's like 2 of these 3 deals, I'm literally doing it because it's like, oh, I've never dealt with that. I want to do that. You know what I mean? It's like I'm you know, not that that's necessarily a good reason to invest, but it is a learning experience doing Kentucky and doing this zoning thing. And so it's been interesting getting to see new stuff. Cool. Any other closing thoughts, comments, questions?
I was just gonna say for you guys in Cincinnati tomorrow, what's the new name of the meetup? Real Estate on Tap. Is that right? I guess.
Yep.
Gage, DJ.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? Is that the new name?
Is
Real
that
estate on tap. Yep.
Okay.
who hosts
yeah.
that one?
That's
Um,
Zach.
Zach.
Oh, Zach.
Elliott.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It used to be at Matt Tree
Yes.
in Oakley, but now it's gonna be somewhere in Madisonville that I've never been to.
Gotcha.
But yeah,
It's that
6:30
new
tomorrow.
Eats place. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
Well, Devesh, thanks again for joining us, man. It's good seeing you. Good talking to you. It's been a while.
Same
Send some of
here.
that sunshine our way.
Planning to join more of this. Thank you all for
Good.
having.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got some value out of it.
Absolutely. Yep.
So yeah, we'll be back on the 17th, and hope to see you all then.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks all.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys.
Bye.